You can tell a lot about someone's security, not when life is calm, but when life is unpredictable. When the job falls through, when the diagnosis comes, when the relationship shifts, when the world feels unstable. And doesn't it always feel unstable these days? Many gifted women assume that if they were truly secure, they wouldn't feel triggered. They wouldn't feel anxious. They wouldn't feel shaken. But that's not what security actually means. That's not what it looks like. And today we're talking about emotional stability in an unstable world and what real security looks like when life doesn't go according to plan. Welcome to the Power to Flourish podcast, where science meets the art of a beautiful life. I'm Dr. Andrea Line, positive psychologist, giftedness expert and coach, and modern day spiritual godmother to brilliant, deep feeling women. This isn't just another self-help podcast. It's a sanctuary, a sacred space to come back to yourself. Each week, we'll explore the emotional experience of gifted, sensitive women and what it means to live a life that feels as beautiful as it may look. Because flourishing isn't a luxury, it's your birthright, and your life is waiting. This is the Power to Flourish podcast. I think a lot of gifted women have this subtle belief that if they were truly secure, they wouldn't get triggered anymore. And I think when you've lived a lot of life not feeling secure and feeling really anxious and, you spiral at the little things or maybe just the big things, there's this fantasy that maybe there is some state of being that other people have where they just are so secure that they never get triggered, that they're so secure that when something unexpected happens, they don't feel shaken at all. And I want to dispel that myth if you believe that myth, because it's just not what emotional stability and security even means. Stability is not the absence of any kind of activation, but it is the ability to return. A secure woman still feels disappointment, right? She still feels fear. She still feels grief. Life is still happening. The difference is that those experiences don't collapse her identity. So she may get shaken in a moment, but she is not uprooted. So what does real security look like when life is hard? I remember earlier in my life when I was very much not feeling secure, little and big things really, really rattled me. And what it looked like for me when I was not secure is that it took a long time for me to return to what I would call a healthy baseline. Now, fast forward, I still encounter unexpected things, right? Personal tragedies, global unrest, all the things that every human being experiences. So what does it look like for me now when life is hard? And I've been through a lot of hard things, even the last 5 years, even the last 1 year. It looks like feeling disappointment without spiraling into shame. It can look like experiencing conflict with people. Just that's going to happen in life, right? But experiencing that conflict without collapsing, whether that's collapsing into people pleasing or like collapsing into total like shutdown mode, or on the other hand, escalating into defensiveness, argumentativeness, like that conflict still happens, but when you're secure, quickly going to those unhealthy places is minimized. Now, again, this doesn't mean people are perfect. And I'm certainly not saying I am perfect, but this is just gives you an idea of what does healthy security look like under stress. It may look like tolerating ambiguity without immediately catastrophizing. That is something I used to do, big time in my earlier chapters of life. I didn't even realize I was doing it. And now I can say it's a lovely place to be when the ambiguity and uncertainty of life just doesn't rattle me. It's like I'm anchored. So going to worst case scenarios in my brain, it just isn't the place I go anymore. You see, gifted women think fast. They pattern recognize quickly. They anticipate outcomes before other people even see the pattern forming. Do you do that? What that means is that during stress, under any kind of stress, their minds can generate very sophisticated threat narratives. Does that sound familiar? And emotional maturity isn't eliminating those narratives entirely. Although I think with emotional maturity, you tend not to come up with so many threatening narratives. But what it does mean is you start recognizing them as narratives. You see them for what they are, and you have enough space so that you can choose not to let them define you. That is what this healthier, secure attachment space can give you. So again, security doesn't mean you never get activated. It doesn't mean nothing ever triggers you ever again in your life, but it means you don't build your identity around the activation. So let's talk about the nervous system of a secure, gifted woman. A secure nervous system doesn't eliminate your intensity, but it does increase your capacity. So as a gifted woman and as someone who works with gifted women, my goal is never to try to dampen your intensity. That is how you're wired. That is how you are beautifully wired. And I, for one, think it is a beautiful thing. So our goal is not necessarily to eliminate that in you. You don't have to feel bad about that. That intensity actually serves you really well, and it serves the people around you well in many different ways. But what we can do when we are expanding your capacity is that ability to increase, that ability to hold more internally is connected to how anchored in a secure attachment, a place of nervous system regulation, right? All of these things are connected. You can feel more. So you can still like feel a lot and maybe even feel more without falling apart. You can experience stress without immediately moving into self-protection. And I think this is a really important one too, is that you can sit in your discomfort with whatever might be coming up for you, whether it's relational, whether it's just, again, a issue at work, something in the family. You can sit in that discomfort without rushing to fix it. And don't we all struggle with that at times? When we're really good at fixing problems, it's hard to not rush in and save the day and fix it. In an unstable world, which, let's face it, we have been living in, and I have a feeling we will be living in for quite some time, probably our entire lifetime, emotional stability is the flexibility that helps you get through life in a sustainable way, right? I always think of the difference between a rigid, I actually started in engineering, side note, but the difference between a rigid structure and, say, a tree or even a building that you build in the flexibility, right? So when the winds blow, if you have a very, very rigid structure, that structure is more likely to fall down, get knocked down by the winds. But if you have a palm tree, right? The winds are blowing, and maybe if it's really, really rough, they'll get taken down. But for the most part, they're created because they have that flexibility to withstand the wind. And that is what we want to do when we're building in this increased capacity, this nervous system regulation. It is building in your ability to bend without breaking. I want to share with you an idea, a framework, without going into all the details because it can get really, really dense. But I want to talk to you about the stages of consciousness from a developmental standpoint. And Robert Kegan is the psychologist that really has done so much work in this field, and he has many wonderful books about it if you want to nerd out and read some of his stuff, or you can just Google his framework. But let me just conceptually take you through these different stages. I'm going to make this real simple. In the earlier stages, what happens to us defines us. It's like when you even think about a baby, the baby doesn't see mom as a separate object. In the baby's mind, from a developmental perspective, the mother and the child are fused. They are as one. And that's a weird concept for us as adults to try to imagine, but this is how it is for babies. But again, these are stages of consciousness. So in the early stages, what happens to us defines us. And if something goes wrong, we are wrong. If someone withdraws, we are unworthy. If circumstances shift, our identity collapses with them. This is why for so many children, even though it might not make sense, quote unquote, for example, if there's a divorce when they're young or, a parent moves out, that even if that parent absolutely loves them and shows up for them and all the things, there can still be this underlying identity that they're unworthy of love, or it was something that they did. When, even if it's very clear and the parents even articulate that it has nothing to do with them, this is part of the developmental stage. So it's just part of it. And for many of us who have early childhood stuff that we've healed through, we can see that our adult self from this point of consciousness can understand that, of course, it wasn't our fault, especially when traumatic things happen, right? We think about sexual abuse survivors, victims, like of all kinds. There is that identity that somehow they are wrong. They are bad, when of course that wasn't the case. But back to the stages of consciousness. So as we mature, something starts to shift. What happens to us, things still happen to us, and it still affects us, but it no longer defines us. And again, over time, as we develop through these different stages of consciousness, we become authors of our responses. We take more ownership and agency, and we are no longer, if we think back again to that baby being fused with mother, we are no longer fused. The subject and object are no longer fused together. We get more and more perspective as we shift out. Now, I said his framework is way more complex than what I'm trying to describe in this moment. Trust me on this, but he has a beautiful way of showing this even in visuals. And again, if you're really into it, you can go read his work. Emotional stability is authorship. It's authorship under pressure. And the more we can step into this consciousness developmentally, that we are the authors of our own lives, that we have agency, that we actually have control over the things we can control, and that we take that responsibility, that gives us a sense of stability that we don't have at younger stages and younger developmental stages and ages. And now you could be 30 and in adult development stages still be at a younger, I'll say it this way, younger, because it's not one is better than the other, but you could be at a earlier psychological stage. And that can make it harder. But as we grow and mature and have different experiences and practice, we grow beyond, just like any developmental stage. So here's what I would love for you to reflect on. When something shakes you, maybe it's just an unexpected point in your day. It doesn't have to be huge. It could just be a change of plans. I mean, sometimes a change of plans shakes me. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a big traumatic thing. Does it shake your moment or your identity? When something shakes you, does it shake your moment or does it shake your identity? That is a really important question to sit with, because it will tell you something about where you are from a developmental, a consciousness, psychological developmental stage. Again, not to shame or blame anyone, but it's sometimes nice just to have the awareness, like, where am I? How am I authoring or maybe not authoring my own life? Here's another one. When life feels uncertain, do you collapse inward or do you expand your capacity? And now maybe you might say, well, it's a little both. Maybe first you collapse inward and then you kind of get your grounding and you're able to expand. That can happen. The secure, gifted woman is not unshakable, but she is rooted. And roots grow deeper in unstable ground. Stability, it's not about controlling your world. And I know for many of us, we would love to be able to use all of our superpowers and control everything around us. We might not admit that, but it would make us feel better, would it not? To feel like we have complete control. But we don't. We don't have control of the world. We don't have control of other people. But we can focus and control and have responsibility for strengthening our own center. That is the piece that we have full control over. Our response, our reaction to things, our ability to take a pause. These are the practices. These are the things the secure, gifted woman does without armoring up. So I hope this was a helpful reflection, reminder. Maybe these are things that you've thought about before, and it's just a good check-in with yourself today. How are you navigating this unstable world? Would you like to navigate it with a little more stability and security? I hope this served you well, and I can't wait to be with you again next week. Until then, keep flourishing. Thank you for listening to the Power to Flourish podcast. I hope today's conversation left you feeling more seen, more supported, and more deeply connected to yourself. And if this episode resonated, would you take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend? It's one of the best ways to help this work reach the women who need it most. You'll find show notes, links, and resources from today's episode at powertoflourish.com. And now just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It's not therapy, medical advice, or a substitute for professional support. And listening doesn't make me your therapist or doctor, though if you're looking for a coach, you know where to find me. All right, beautiful one, that's it for now. Until next time, trust yourself, honor your gifts, and keep flourishing.